Good morning. My name is Monica, and today's session is called Connecting via Mobile Applications. It's part of our Zoom-in webinars, a third actually in our series. We will have 4 of them in total. Just to tell you a bit more about Alpha Plus, we are a support agency for literacy and basic skills organizations across Ontario. There are over 300 of them, and we provide free technology coaching services, face-to-face and online training, tech support, advisory and working groups, as well as research and resource gathering. The session's goals for today is to take a quick look at applications that allow us to connect through mobile applications. And in this case, we will be looking at WhatsApp. We will take a look at Google Hangouts, Messenger, Viber, and a few other ones, such as Skype, FaceTime, and texting. The reason we are doing those sessions is our team really wants to help during those difficult times. We are receiving lots of inquiries for ideas, tips, training, and resources. And this session is really just a quick overview of what's out there, but we hope it's going to give you a bit of information and ideas that you can start planning for and exploring as well. You can follow up with us through email or phone with additional questions, and we can do more individualized demonstrations or tests with you to make sure you have a chance to explore those tools in more detail, or we can answer any questions you may have. It's also a chance for us to use Zoom and figure out how it works as we organize the sessions, plus as we do recordings, and consider working with us as a coaching client. So one of the services we provide is working with agencies across Ontario to provide technology coaching and support. And even though we're just doing a brief overview of some of the tools and resources, you can always contact us and we can do a full coaching and consultation support for you. And it's part of our funding that we provide those for free to literacy and basic skills organizations. When you talk about and look at technologies and using applications, as with any technology, there will be specific considerations you should take into account. In this case, one of the very first ones we want to sort of highlight is smartphone versus tablet versus laptop and desktop access. The reason we are bringing this up is that depending on what you and your learners may have access to, different applications and different tools may or may not be available, or may not work through or across all of the devices you may have access to. So it's really important to check with your learners, check with your team, what's available, who is using what, and make sure that when you're choosing the types of applications you will be using with your colleagues and learners, you know if they will be running on specific applications they have access to. Another piece is looking at the cost. Some of the tools and resources you may have may not be as cheap as other ones, and that the same thing applies to applications. Some of them may be free, and some of them may require subscriptions, so that's something to consider. Also, the ease of use and the look of the applications, whether they're easy to use, how many steps you have to take to do something, how easy it may be for new learners or new technology users who are not as familiar with technology. All those steps and the ease of use is really, really important in making sure that your clients, your learners are really comfortable with the technology and applications you're trying to use with them. Also, digital skills and comfort with technology. Even though somebody may be using a phone, they may not be as comfortable with switching or using a tablet or a new application that you're asking them to use. And then that comfort level can be low or high, and then sometimes we just need a bit of more time to get somebody used to it, adjust it, and get comfortable as well. Personal versus organizational use of mobile devices is something we want to highlight as well, especially when you're considering using those tools. Many times instructors or programs may not be providing mobile devices to staff members. So sometimes they may rely on their personal devices to be able to text a learner. That's just really a highlight or pointing out that it's technically something that the instructor shouldn't and doesn't have to do. It's their personal devices. And if they're using those, they're sharing their phone number with the client or learner. And that's something that needs to be discussed as a team, and decisions should be made whether that's something the program should be doing or not. And if really there is a need for the use of the devices, then would the program be able to provide those as well? Another part of that consideration is actually the data usage. If an instructor is using personal account and using it to share videos or pictures with learners, that may take up quite a bit of data. So making sure that it's checked what's available, what kind of plan will the instructor or program have on the phone is really important. And if you're an organization considering purchasing a mobile device, again, looking at the data plan, what's available, how much data is being used if the actual mobile device is used for video calls and things like that. So in our case, we really encourage you to use Wi-Fi if possible. I know at pre-COVID-19, you could go to a library or a store, coffee shop where you could use their Wi-Fi, but at home, we really encourage you that when you're home, you have potentially a router set up if possible, and have your mobile devices connect to the router. So you're not using your mobile data plan, which is usually much, much smaller than what you may have access to at home. As we go through the slides and the different information we will be sharing, I just want to make sure that you understand that I'm using a specific phone. And in this case, it is a Pixel 2 XL. It's a Google phone. It's my personal phone that I use and took pictures with. It's an Android phone. And I purchased this phone because I love the camera on it. And just to highlight that the layout and look on other mobile devices may be slightly different than what I'm sharing with you or the screen captures I'm providing. And also some of the applications I will be sharing or discussing are really personal preferences. It's one of those things with mobile apps that there may be so many of them and each of us may like something else. So it's a bit harder to sort of find that uniform one app that everybody will like. There will be all kinds of reasons why you may or may not choose that specific application. And I just want to highlight that when discussing those today, some of them are really personal preferences because I have tested them, I like them, and feel that maybe they may be useful for the program and the field. When we discuss some of the sections today, we will be using specific vocabulary. So we thought it would be useful to just clarify some of it and make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to the meaning of those. So for example, end-to-end encryption, which is basically a security when you're sending messages, means that your messages are scrambled and only the sender and the receiver of the messages have the proper keys to read them. And it's not really a key, it's basically ability to be able to open and read them. No one else besides those two has access to those messages and can take a look or decipher them in any way. So whenever we hear the wording end-to-end encryption, it basically means it's a very secure connection. Open source code means that applications and platforms that we may be looking at are open up and others can take a look at the code and figure out what's inside, how it's programmed, and potentially notice if there are any errors in coding on how the program was written up. Those users can actually point out to the developers that there may be an issue. So that kind of approach can help with a bit more accountability and auditing. So others, experts, for example, can take a look and really help with finding the weakness spots and vulnerabilities in the code. Data collection, we will be touching on that as well, is really done when many providers provide you with the services, and usually it is done for ad targeting. So a user may be searching for specific information online, and then as we type in some of those keywords, the provider may be tracking that, and based on those keywords, may be targeting you with specific ads related to that specific keyword that you're using. So they will be collecting information. They're not going to collect all the information about you, but they potentially will be collecting information about the type of device you're using, your IP address, which is the address of your computer. That helps them with the location and geographic location and targeting that way. Potentially phone numbers may be used and collected as well. So when we will be talking and touching on some of the tools, again, we will be exploring that and highlighting that you may not even be aware that some of that information is being collected. So as I mentioned earlier, we will be touching on different applications. The very first one we're looking at, it's called WhatsApp. And it is really one of the most popular applications we have seen to date. It is something that's used for users to text each other, to message each other, to send pictures, to send videos. But the only main thing you need to know and really be aware of is that it requires a mobile phone number to be used. So for example, if I have a tablet, but I do not have a mobile phone number, I will not be able to use this application. So really the users and how it started is through mobile phone number. And even though later on, there is also a desktop application and a specific remote access that you can use, it still requires your phone number, which means in a way you're sharing that information with whoever has access to, going back to that privacy information and also data usage, that somebody will actually get your mobile phone number. It is available for mobile phones, but not tablets. So as I mentioned earlier, there's no application you can find to allow you to connect WhatsApp. At least it wasn't until we recorded this session. But it is available on all mobile devices, whether it's Androids or Apple products. You can also sign into your WhatsApp application through a browser or download a desktop version onto your laptop or desktop device. But again, what will happen is as you're setting up those, the system will actually ask you to connect to your phone number to be able to sync the information. So it still will require the mobile phone number for it to be used. Through the WhatsApp application, you can share pictures, voice and video calls. You can even share GIFs, which is those funny, funky videos, short videos with moving pictures, documents, location, voice notes. Very easy to use because there's just a button you can click and you can record your message and send it through the application to somebody else. I actually have a friend who is using it when she's walking her dog. She would just hit the button and record it and send it to me. So it's a bit easier for her than walking and typing. In the group chats, you can actually connect with bigger groups of people. So there are some higher numbers where you can create basically almost like a group activity or a collection of users that are talking and working together on different things. There's also a broadcast option to send a message to multiple contacts. But just to clarify, that option allows you to send the same message to multiple users. There's pictures and videos that get resized for faster delivery. So if you are Google Hangouts users, you may notice that the picture, when you add it, it will take a bit of time to upload and send to the recipient. On WhatsApp, because the picture is resized, it takes a lot faster, but keep that in mind that on the delivery end, on the phone or even on the computer, it will look good. But if you're sending that picture for printing, you should remember that it has been resized and the resolution is actually much smaller. So something to keep in mind. You can mute your notifications. So what that means is that if you're busy with something else and you don't want the alarms going off, you can mute those so you can concentrate on something else. And those that muting is available for 1 hour, 1 day, and I think even longer if you want to. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of that specific vocabulary we are using today, it's end-to-end encryption on WhatsApp. It has been developed by a team behind Signal, which is another mobile application developer, and they have checked and helped WhatsApp make sure that the end-to-end encryption works properly. It was actually purchased by Facebook in 2014. So if you're not a big Facebook fan, you should know that. But it has over 1.5 billion users. And it's something that really is a very useful and handy tool. With my family, we are using it to communicate as a family and as a group. So that way we can post pictures, messages, videos, and the group actually consists of family members, not only within Canada, but also abroad. So it's a very quick and easy way for us to connect because we can do video calls. We can also see each other very quickly. We can do actually just calls. It's not the same as making a regular phone call. It's still going through the application, but it's a free call that we can make and talk to each other. We can hear each other if we want to directly through the WhatsApp application. Just to give you a bit of an overview of some of the screen captures, and again, just a reminder, this is an Android phone and it's a Google 2XL, so your application and on your specific phone may look slightly differently. But just to show you some of the features, so if you open the application on your mobile device, you will see the very first on top in the menu will be camera, so I can take pictures and send them to my WhatsApp connections. I can chat with somebody, so you will see a list of different users I'm connected with. And that way we basically can send messages to each other They're not the same as text messages. Those messages here actually are going through the WhatsApp application. So the recipient also has to have WhatsApp, but it really allows us to quickly connect with each other. You will also notice that I can make calls, as I mentioned earlier, and it doesn't mean they have to be video calls. They could also be just the audio calls, which will reduce the amount of data usage you may be using as you're making that connection. Going back to the data usage, as soon as you do video calls, you're using up a lot more data than using just a sound or audio call. You can also click on the snowman menu, which is the three tiny dots in the top right corner, and that will allow you to create new groups, create broadcasts, which is sending that message to multiple users. You can connect to the web application. You can stamp specific messages to keep them as favorites and notice them. And also you can go to settings. And in the settings, you can go to notifications. That's where you can clarify and check if you want to mute your notifications for a period of time. But also there are other settings in there. And one of the ones that I really want to point out is the data and storage usage. You will see if you actually open that setting, you will notice that there's something called auto download. What that means is that if somebody sends you pictures and the auto download is activated, any pictures that somebody sends you through WhatsApp will automatically save to your phone. So if you're talking to somebody and they're sending you a lot of pictures or videos, that they actually can take up a lot of space on your phone and even eat up full storage. So in my case, I actually had to learn the hard way. I couldn't understand why pictures from users I actually wasn't even familiar with, or I didn't even see the message, were popping up in my pictures. And it turned out that it was WhatsApp downloading those pictures to my album. So if you don't want that to happen, if you want to save your storage, make sure to go into settings and go to auto download and turn off that feature. What that will do is that you will still see that somebody sends you a picture, but you will have to tap on that picture to be able to download it. So it's a bit of a manual option, but it gives you a choice to decide, do I actually want to download that picture to the phone? Or because I have low storage, I may not want to do it now. I may need to clean up the storage and then open that picture. So something to be mindful of and keep in mind. As I mentioned, it's possible to use WhatsApp on a desktop. And again, there's actually two ways to do that. One is as a web, and that means you're not downloading anything. You actually are going to a web page where you are connecting your phone to the web application. And it allows you to see the messages on the computer or through the browser and ask questions, respond, chat, just the way you would do it on the phone. It just would be a bit bigger to make it easier for potentially for you to use. If you go to the whatsapp.com website, you will see all the information and resources there. And as I mentioned, again, just connecting that web application to your phone, you will have to do that. So you will not be able to use WhatsApp web version without the phone again. So you cannot bypass that step. As you're setting up, the system will actually say, before you continue, you have to open up your phone, go to settings, and connect the phone using that QR code, this box, where the phone will scan it and actually make that connection for you. So this needs to happen through your browser for those two to talk to each other and be able to connect and use WhatsApp in the browser. The desktop version is a bit newer, and it actually works slightly differently. In the desktop version, what it means is that you actually download the program to your computer, and you still will have to do that setup and then connect the phone to it. So you're not bypassing it by using the desktop version. It just actually adds an icon on your desktop. So if there's new messages, you will be receiving pop-ups, and that can happen at any time. Where the web browser version, you actually have to be logged into internet or on internet to be able to use that one. So slightly different way to use those two. I do use the desktop version. I find it very handy when I'm working on my computer. I do not have to pull out the phone every time. But what I found useful is that muting notification. So if I'm in a meeting or recording a session, my notifications are not popping up and I can turn them off. And those alerts can be turned off for 1 hour, 1 day, or 1 week. You should say you should go back and turn it back on, because sometimes the system will just stay in that mode until you come back and turn it back on. So just something to keep in mind. That's all for WhatsApp. And the next tool we will be talking about is Google Hangouts. It is a tool that's available with Gmail applications. And so if you have a regular Gmail account, so when I say regular, it means a personal Gmail account, which will end with @gmail.com, you will have access to Google Hangouts automatically. Android users use Gmail for and can get the Play Store account. So if you go into the Play Store, just to clarify that, you can go and find your Google Hangouts application and you can download it if you don't have it already. Basically, most of the phones I have seen so far, that actually came automatically if it's an Android phone. If you are an iPhone user, you can still download it. You just have to, again, go to your Play Store and download it from there, or Apple Store. You have to have a Gmail account to connect to each other. And that piece is really important. Just to clarify, I cannot send a message to anyone who doesn't have a Gmail. If I connected to my Gmail account, signed in, and I open my Google Hangouts, I can send a message to somebody else, another person that has a Gmail account, and we actually have to be connected. So we actually had to give ourselves permission to connect with each other. I cannot go in and say, I want to send a message to somebody with a Yahoo account or Simpatico account. They just don't talk to each other. So Google Hangouts is really within Gmail application or within the Google application that works between users. I can compare it sort of to a FaceTime, where Apple applications are using FaceTime with each other. So a FaceTime user cannot really use a Gmail application as well. So just within the specific platform as well. You can use multiple accounts and easily switch between them. What that means is that I can go to my settings on my Google Hangouts and I can be signed in with 2 or 3 different accounts if I want to. Again, they all have to have the Gmail accounts, but if I'm using Gmail for my personal emails and Gmail for work, I can be signed in into both and basically with one tap switch between those to send messages. And that allows me to quickly send messages to my personal contacts or my work contacts without having to switch between applications and then so on. You can also sign into Hangouts through a browser or download a desktop version of it. And if you do that, in both cases, you can really just have something pop up on the screen when you're receiving the messages. And then there is a button you can click on to send messages as well. So handy for your laptop and desktop, available for you to download. There's a website you can go to and do that. It's a very quick and easy way for Gmail users to connect with each other, just because it's right there, they're using the applications. So it's a very easy way to connect. You can send messages, you can do phone calls, video calls with each other, and then you can work as individuals or groups, and you can share pictures, videos, files, and even location. So up to 25 people can do a video call together, and they will just pop up on the screen with separate videos, very similar to Google Meet. We may be touching on that a bit later. You can also make calls to landlines, which is one of the very specific features of this one. So it's not only application to application, it has built-in ability to dial phone numbers, landline phone numbers, and call directly from the application. It is not fully encrypted. What that means is that at some point somewhere, Gmail potentially may have access to the data. And very often it happens when it's stored on the Gmail server. So that way they will have access to it. So it's something for you to consider and take into account if that is very important to you. It will be phased out in a year or so. They actually have been saying about phasing it out for the last 2-3 years, but really they're delaying it because there are so many users and that are using this type of application. And so what they're replacing it with, if that actually happens, is chat and duo applications. The difference between those two is the chat allows you to have good messaging and sending pictures and tools like that, but it doesn't have a video. The video actually happens through Google Meet. And duo application is sort of similar, but in duo application, the purpose was actually to have it basically used between 2 users. That's why a duo. But with COVID-19, we have seen that the application is being used and there's a permission to actually use it with more than 2 users. So those 2 applications will be replacing Hangouts. But if you're still considering it or you want to try it, it's still available. And at Alpha Plus, we have been using Google Hangouts potentially for the last 4 years or so to connect with each other. As you may know, we work from home. We are located in different parts of Ontario and even beyond Ontario. So that allows us to quickly check in and connect with each other because we are all using Gmail as well, or Google products. Again, some screen captures to help you with understanding some of the features. If I open my Hangouts application, the very first tab I will see will be the chat option. So again, you will see I have different contacts I can connect with. And again, those could be individual contacts or groups. If I send a message to the group, the entire group can see the message and respond. So it's very easy to connect with our team, for example, one message going to everyone, or individuals, or even smaller project groups. So we will have one big group for the entire team, but also if we are working on specific projects, we may have smaller groups and talk to each other about projects only. If I click on the specific name of a person, so if I select one specific person to connect with, as soon as I select that account or even a group, it will give me a bit more features. So when I click on that, I can send them a message. I can also do a video calls with them or audio call. So with the audio call, what it means in this case is actually, it is still almost like a video call, but the video is off. So it's going through the application, I'm sending the signal through application, and the receiving person is also receiving it through the Hangouts application. But you will also notice that if I want to switch between accounts, it's very easy for me to do. You will see on the third screen capture that there is a tiny face. That's my work account, and a cat, that's my personal account. And I can basically just tap on one or the other to switch between accounts. So again, no signing in and out, no opening of a new application or two applications next to each other on my screen. What I'm doing is right within the application, I can just basically tap between those two accounts and switch back and forth to quickly communicate with my contacts. And finally, the second tab in the menu on Hangouts is a receiver. That receiver is actually different because this one is actually phone calls. And those phone calls are different than the receiver within the chat. That receiver is actually a sort of separate almost application that allows me to call a phone number. And that phone number can be another mobile device phone number or a landline. So that's a special feature. And I know, and I have seen some programs looking at that as a tool to allow you to call your clients potentially without using personal phone number of the instructor or coordinator. It may be very useful now during physical distancing because again, you don't have to have a phone at home, you're not using your personal number, and it still allows you to call clients who may not have mobile devices, who are using landline phone numbers. So handy tool. Just to be honest with you, we actually have used this when traveling abroad. It is available in Canada and US for free. So you can actually call the States, or from the States, you can call Canada. We also used it for calling from Poland. And then so when we were in Poland, because I think we had Canadian numbers, we were able to call Canada for free as well. So that was interesting. We cannot call Poland for free, but we can call Canada for free. So that was interesting. As I mentioned, there is a desktop version of Hangouts. So if you go into your account, or if you go even to hangouts.google.com, you will be able to open a window where you can just start the conversations as well. So it doesn't have to happen on your mobile device. It will sync, so all the contacts you have on your phone will be visible on your screen as well. And again, you can start a new conversation with someone, and or pick whoever you already have on your list. So in this case, if I click on that new conversation, you will see I will be able to dial the number and basically do a video call again, phone call or message. And it's very, very easy to use, very similar to what you get with the mobile device. And again, on the left, you will notice there's groups and a receiver to make phone calls. So very, very handy tool, fantastic for those who are using Gmail to make it easy for everyone. But keep in mind, it's a tool that works Google Hangout to Google Hangout. Actually similar to WhatsApp. In WhatsApp, you were using WhatsApp to WhatsApp as well. The next application is Facebook Messenger. It has been evolving over time, and there's, I think, even more features after this presentation that have been added as soon as a few days ago. So this is always evolving and changing, but I hope I'll give you a bit of idea of what you can do with it. So it is something that's available from Facebook. So if you have a Facebook account, you automatically, again, have access to your Messenger. It's available on a laptop and desktop directly through your Facebook application. And will be actually called messages within your Facebook account. On mobile devices, it's available as a separate app. So it's not built into the same application as just your Facebook. You download a separate messenger app. And what I have heard is that actually you could even set it up separately without Facebook. But if you use Facebook, it's linked to your Facebook contacts. So the same contacts you will see on your Facebook account will be visible here. You can connect with your contacts that way. And it's actually easy, again, to connect. Very similar functionality. So your contacts and connections come through Facebook. The free version or easy version without Facebook, you have a link here that you have to click on. We had one of our team members that talked about that, and then the participant in one of our sessions mentioned to us that it is possible, but it works in a slightly different way, just a regular messenger through Facebook, because it's not syncing in the same way as a regular Facebook Messenger application. So keep that in mind as you're setting it up or testing it. With the Messenger, is similar features as the WhatsApp or Google Hangouts. And what I mean by that is you can do voice calls, you can do video calls, and you can send messages. So very handy tool, free. You can share pictures within those messages, videos, links, voice clips, location, stickers, GIFs, and even emoji. So a lot of different things you can share and communicate with each other. Again, for many users, it's one of those tools that became very popular when we started using Facebook. We started connecting with family members abroad. And now we had the opportunity to actually send messages to each other, pictures, and actually do video meetings online for free without having to pay long distance fees. So very handy tool. Some users have switched from that to use WhatsApp. Others stayed and continue using Messenger. If you have learners who are using Facebook, it may be one of the ways for you to connect with your learners. And again, it could be in a Facebook app or Facebook account that you have. So in this case, I would be very mindful because you don't want to share your personal information or account. But if you have a page or if you set up an account for your organization, then that account may be a bit distant or different than personal use accounts. And that may be very handy to connect and communicate with your learners who are also using Facebook. It is being upgraded to include rooms. So when we were doing that, we knew this was going to happen. I think at this point, those rooms are available. So you can actually work in groups and video call each other in rooms. They call them rooms, or like specific groups that you can call. It is also not fully encrypted. And in this case, it's a bit easier to give you an example. Facebook does track some of the information about you because of ads that they target towards you. So that makes total sense that they're not fully encrypting everything because they want to know a bit more about what you're doing. Again, they're not tracking your personal messages. They're not tracking your contacts per se. They're kind of tracking or monitoring your preferences and what you're interested in to make sure that they can target you with the ads. It can be frustrating because sometimes you may be looking for a kettle or something like that, and you may have already bought it, but they're still targeting you with those ads. So it can be a bit frustrating, but that's how they're getting it. That's how they know what to target towards you. 1.3 billion users, so a bit less than WhatsApp, but still a fairly high number of users. If I open the app, so the Facebook app that I have, and then this is just to give you an idea, the very first screen capture is actually my Facebook account. So it's Facebook app that I have open. And just to show you that even though on computers or laptops, the Messenger is built into the Facebook applications, on mobile devices, at least for me, on my Android, I have to use two separately. So one of them will be a Facebook application where I can just post messages, read what others are posting, go to Marketplace, join groups. In the top right corner, I actually have a Messenger button. If I click on it, it will automatically switch almost to my Messenger app and show me who I'm connecting with, whether it's individuals or groups. I can find new users, I can send messages. So it's a very nice and easy way to connect with my Facebook contacts. And again, as soon as I select a specific person, we can send messages to each other, pictures, I can call, I can video call, and so on. So as I'm going through different applications, you are seeing a lot of features that are very similar between the different applications. And when I mention preferences, a lot of times the application you will use will be really based on what you like and what you're using on a regular basis. If I go into the desktop version or look on it on my laptop or desktop, the look will be slightly different just because the applications look different. But again, I will have an icon for my messages or for my chats. And once again, my contacts will show up. I can see what we are talking about. I can see the messages. I can see pictures. And I can create new groups or just click on the names and send messages to my existing contacts as well. So that's it for Facebook and Facebook Messenger. Let's jump into Viber. Viber is something that we, or I heard more about in Europe rather than Canada, but there are still users who are using that. So just to give you an option and talk about it. It is a calling and messaging app. Family members the member doesn't want to use anything else. So that was one of the reasons for us. We actually decided to use Viber because one of our aunts just was using it and was really adamant that we use this one with her. So we installed it and we have been using it with her specifically. You do need to use your phone number to set up an account. And it was purchased in 2014 by a Japanese company, Rakuten. It bought eBay, if you have been using that before. So Rakuten is rapidly growing and really investing in a lot of technology and tools as well. It provides end-to-end encryption, and that was one of the reasons that family member wanted to use this app in the past. And then some notice that it collects phone numbers and scans your contact list. What that means is that even if you haven't connected with someone, you may get a recommendation to tell you that somebody in your vicinity or somebody you may have called is actually using Viber. And it was very interesting in my case. We had a new neighbors who moved in into our next door, and we exchanged phone numbers. So I put the neighbor's number in my contact list. And all of a sudden, I started receiving notifications that that neighbor is on Viber if I want to add him to my Viber contacts. And I couldn't understand at first what was happening. I haven't used Viber with him, but it actually turned out that basically Viber, my app on my phone, scanned my contact list and checked and told me, oh, I'm going to compare all the phone numbers you have in your contact list to whom we have in our system and tell you who actually is using Viber. So some users love that idea because they don't even have to search. They actually told that somebody else is on that same app, and so it's easier to connect. Others are not comfortable with that because the system is actually collecting that information and keeping that information, so collecting the phone numbers and potentially the names of the clients as well. If you decide to use Viber, users can share pictures, videos, files, just the same way other applications work. And you can have groups and communities. So communities can be public or private. If you're a Facebook user and you use groups, it's similar idea. So you can create public groups and communities where you can connect with other people who you may not even know as well. So it can be pretty open, and you may want to be very mindful about that. Or you can keep it public or private and a bit more closed if you want to. Over 1 billion users, so again, a fairly used and popular app that you may want to take a look or consider as well. For screen captures, you will see again that I can go to chats, very similar kind of usage or tools that I see in Google Hangouts. So in chat, I can see my contacts that I can connect with, I can send messages. I can also make phone calls. So again, I can call specific numbers and locations. It was handy when we were traveling in Europe because I was able to make phone calls to even landlines or mobile phone numbers without having to pay long distance charges. So that was handy. And again, it allows me to create groups or communities where I can connect with not only individuals, but private groups or even communities that are open and public. So those may be handy if you are a gardener or you have a specific hobby and want to connect with others that have the same interests as you. I also want to talk about other tools that you may be interested in. SMS, texting messages. A lot of users still use that and have those built into their plans. If you do not have access to higher end or higher paid mobile data plans, you may be using texting as one of the main ways to connect with others. And just to keep in mind that the texting is limited with length, so 160 characters. It can be harder to send links or pictures in those, depending on what kind of phone you have and what kind of app you're using. And then there are other attachment options, but it kind of jumps between just being a texting or message. So it may still use a bit of your data if that's something that where you're sending videos or pictures. But it is a very handy tool to connect with each other or with learners if you need to use that. Others have been using LinkedIn, so it's a bit more professional community that you can connect. And again, that has its own chat and video conferencing option. So if you want to connect with others that way, it is possible. And you can kind of maintain that professional status on connection from your own account to the users. They really don't get your personal information. They don't get your personal phone numbers and things like that. Skype is another one, very popular for many users still. It has gone through some changes. Other apps or tools may have taken over, but it is still available as an app. And for me, I haven't used it for a few years, and all of a sudden, I have somebody messaging me or sending me information. So it's still handy to consider and use, very similar to other tools we discussed today. FaceTime is another one that is available to Apple community. So in this way, Google Hangouts is available to Google users, FaceTime is available to Apple users. So a bit more close community per se. So it's a bit harder to communicate with the FaceTime if you have users that are using also Androids because they don't have that application. Signal is another interesting program, Telegram, Wire, WickerMe, Dust, Jabber, so many. When we were looking at research and looking at some of the applications, it almost became overwhelming. But I thought I will include those for you because in some cases, you may be looking or be very specific about the end-to-end encryption and making sure that you have access to that. Some of them are open source. So again, I mentioned that as a definition in that case where they show you the code. So experts can take a look at it and again clarify and check if there are any vulnerabilities, and then you can point them out and make sure that they get fixed as soon as possible. I have heard of programs using Jabber. It's usually used in bigger organizations because there's usually an enterprise application and option. So there's a bigger cost to use this one. But some programs, I know Humber College is using that, may be very handy and practical for bigger organizations where they're looking at hundreds of users, if not thousands. So it's good to know as well. And of course, many more different ones that you may be using. So if you're using some, please share them with us. Let us know. We will be very happy to add them to our list of resources as well. Before we wrap up, I just want to touch base and have a quick conversation with you about what to choose and how do you make those choices. So a few tips here. The very main one, or the simplest one for me to think about, is actually looking at what devices do you have. If you are using Android phone, then you very likely will be looking at Android applications. But is it a phone? Is it a tablet? Is this application available, or both, or just one of them? So that may drive some of your decisions as well. Also, do you want this application to be available on a desktop or laptop? Some of them are, and you have seen I try to share which ones are available through the desktop laptop, so you have that choice. For me, usually it wasn't a big driver, but it is handy to have that application on your laptop. So if you're working on your device, on your laptop or desktop, and you have the pop-ups, you don't have to switch between that and your phone. But it's not really that difficult to have the phone next to you and still respond to the messages. So really a preference, but that preference may drive your decision. Another one is the data plan again. So going back to looking at the different applications, what's being used, how much data will you use, and really what you're using it for. So if you are connecting with your family to exchange pictures only or just quickly messages, it may not take as much. But if you're doing video calls and you're doing those videos very often, that will affect your plan. So if you're using a mobile device with a low plan, you may basically choose to use applications that are using desktop laptop features where you may have a much better home plan or Wi-Fi connection and so on. So those again will be driving some of your decisions. If you're trying to decide and use applications with your colleagues, family members, all learners, my aunt or my family member example I think will be a very good tip here. Look at what they're using. So if many of them are using WhatsApp, you may be just using WhatsApp. If they're using Hangouts, you may be using Hangouts. In a way, you may actually accidentally exclude some family members if you don't take that into account, or learners or colleagues. A good example, my family, actually my parents are using a tablet. they do not have a mobile plan or a phone. And then so we have been using Hangouts, but recently more family members started using WhatsApp. My parents can't use that because they do not have a mobile phone, so they feel a bit excluded and are not able to be part of the same conversation. So again, something to consider if you're introducing those tools for a classroom use with learners, which tool will actually work for the majority of your learners so they do not feel excluded as well. And of course, what are you comfortable with when it comes to privacy and security? We try to highlight that end-to-end encryptions or not, so you know what you're getting yourself into. Even though I have showed you that there are some applications that do not have end-to-end encryption, I have been using them. So that didn't stop me from using those tools. But if it's something that's really important to you, please take that into account and be mindful of that. And of course, personal versus organizational connections. That's usually is that hardest part for smaller organizations that may not be able to afford providing mobile devices to the staff members or just have one. So if you are working from home and need to contact your learners, only the person who has that phone for the organization may be able to do that if you don't want to use your personal devices. And some staff members do choose to do that and are open to that, others are not. Something to consider and discuss as a team, as a program. Where is the line? How much are you expecting from your instructors, and how much support you're able to give them in those situations? Because, for example, if they're texting or using WhatsApp with the learners, they actually are sharing their phone numbers. So something to consider and be mindful of as well. Extra resources for you to use. So you also will have access to slides from this presentation, so you can download or follow the links here and have more information about the resources we discussed and a bit more for you to explore. And that's it. So I hope you find this information useful and handy. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out and contact us. You have my contact information here. You can visit our website. And then we will be very happy to hear back from you and get questions, answers, tips. We welcome them all. Thank you so much.